Hi everybody, it's Lace, and I am here decked out in my, what I call my construction gear worker. It's kind of my old YMCA outfit because I got blue jeans on and stuff from last year's Halloween. And Halloween is approaching, but most importantly, what's approaching is the dungeon building aspect of the game. And I can foresee a lot of creative things coming out of this. Not only one, some crafters are going, ooh, I can farm my own, metal scrap or whatever they're looking for, wood scrap and stuff. And metal scrap right now tends to be a little harder to obtain than it used to be. And we've gone through these cycles over the years where it's all wood scrap or it's all metal scrap, and then they change the weapons the monsters drop. And so we see it just sometimes it's feast or famine one way or the other. Right now it's kind of a metal scrap dilemma. The same thing's also going on with raw wood. You're going to see prices have really gone up on raw wood, and you're going, why? Well, the reason behind that is with the extended times that we had double producer XP, and now it's finally doubled permanently, a lot of people were making tabletop catapults. I'm sure you've seen the threads on these, and then you've seen other people, take the converse side. Well, you can get better XP doing this or that or the other, but the wood still seems to be in pretty short demand. Also, the only ways to get a decent amount of wood for the amount of time you invest is to do sieges, and we've seen their difficulty increase. While they're not mandatory anymore to get into, say, a town or a POT, people just aren't doing them. Therefore, there's not that much wood on the market. Going around in a scene and gathering wood, yeah, you can get some, but you've still got to put in so many hours just to get 100 or 200 wood, and therefore that's the reason for the price increase. Again, I've said it as a tip before in other videos, the best way to get wood is do sieges. If you cannot solo them, two people can probably do pretty good. And again, I've shown tips on you don't need to clear the whole siege and the Kabbalists and everything with it to get the wood. It's the siege engineers that drops it, and that's going to be your best choice of wood. Now, with that said, while I wanted to focus on dungeon building, I just kind of wanted to throw in some other resources because it is my hope that while we're making granite walls and granite intersections and things like that we can craft in game now, I'd love to see some wood variations, perhaps even some metal variations where, more of the cobalt aesthetic comes into play with maybe iron walls or something like that. And I'm sure that'll come over time because they can just reskin the assets that they've already created just with a different texture and stuff like that. So, who knows, maybe ore and stuff will go up in price and everything too. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I think eventually we'll see a lot more things that are craftable for your dungeon pieces. So continuing on, obviously it's daylight and I shot that last part in the dark because I like to go over what I just shot and see if I need to re-edit it or whatever. Anyway, some of the uses that I can personally think of, and I'm sure there's many ideas out there, and maybe I'll start a thread of ideas people have for how they're going to use their dungeon. One of the ones that came to mind today for me in my particular town of POT of Diamond Fields is we've seen guilds and stuff try to do scavenger hunts of different types. Well, with your residents who have built dungeons, why not do a, interconnected kind of scavenger hunt where perhaps you're given these are the homesteads that you need to go check out, do their dungeon, and retrieve something from each one of these dungeons. That way people can be as creative as they want with as many monsters as they want, but we can all use them together in sync to create a final product. Now, I know there's been a lot of talk about being able to, player created quests. And while that's not really on the table quite yet, we can do that in the realms of using player created dungeons. You have to navigate the dungeon to get to a chest at the final part to achieve some item for a scavenger hunt. I can see this being very successful in many player owned towns, and I hope you guys will take up that fight and think about doing that on your own. For us, we've been running the New Britannia Breast Cancer Awareness Biathlon, and this would be the fourth year. Now, I'm delaying that. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I'm delaying that slightly because I want these dungeons to come online where they can be decoed, for one thing. And instead of an overland map race, I may use this exact scavenger hunt idea where the whole thing takes place in Diamond Fields. I've got to see how or when that's going to come into play because I don't want to delay the event too much. And on the back table, that's still been on the back of our list of things to do in Diamond Fields, is The Price is Right. That's mostly done, but with the wood shortage, I'm having to spend a lot of time gathering to be able to give away all these items because, you know, wood's so expensive. I've even bought a lot of wood. So I'm sure some people are happy about that, whereas I usually just try to gather it on my own. But that's a pretty expensive event to host. And then with the dungeon things and stuff, I've just been super sidetracked in trying to coordinate so many things. So yes, we've been lax on our events. Another thing upcoming is, the removal of death decay. And there's many of our people that want to do harder content, at least with our guild, and everybody's welcome. But we're kind of waiting for that a little bit to try some riskier stuff that we may not have a down pat strat for, or have read the forums and, checked it out. So anyway, getting back to dungeons, I just kind of wanted to recap everything we've gotten going on here in Diamond Fields and, of course the guild Prism and stuff, because we kind of, while we have a POT and we have a guild, they're loosely interconnected and not one belongs to the other or vice versa and stuff, but I speak of them commonly. And that's for you new folks that are starting to play the game, just trying to give you a little general background there. So let's start out with, let's build a dungeon. How do you build a dungeon? What's it going to take? How much time and expectation? What are your limitations and stuff on thinking about how you build a dungeon? That's what I want to cover next. So first off, in dungeon building, you need to have a piece of land, and that's going to be a row lot deed, or because there's some that will fit on row lot deeds, the entrances do, like the book, and those are all right now only available through the add-on store, but you will find vendors selling them for in-game gold, and I think there is some that are craftable entrances, and there will be craftable entrances, so quote-unquote not pay to play. You can make a great dungeon without spending any real life money. In addition, the fancier looking items will be in the add-on store, but they're not necessary to build a good dungeon. Now, if you bought some of the quote-unquote dungeon entrances from the add-on store, you'll find that some of them have a pretty large footprint. For example, if I do dungeon, I've got some pieces on me here. If I do Dungeon Circle of Stones entrance, you're going to see that's pretty big. And this is a village lot that I'm sending it on. Obviously, it's not going to fit on a row lot. But there are some smaller ones. I think, okay, that was a stone arch. There's one with an arch that will comfortably fit on a village lot with a village property with a house on there in many cases. Depending on the type of house you have, what you can fit on it, and that's going to be village and up. Now the book one, and I think there's a magic mirror one. I think both of those fit from my testing on a row lot deed. Now the advantages and disadvantages with these different types, these were sold with different prices, and they have a different starting point in the number of quote-unquote what they're calling points for the dungeon, where they're saying it's a 50-point dungeon or a 75 or a 100-point dungeon. That is basically telling you the amount of quote-unquote land you have to work with. And then through gold purchases in-game, or I believe you can use Kodos to make it in real life money, you can expand the number of quote-unquote points your dungeon is. Each unit that you build with has a point value associated to it, and basically this is a way to limit it to where you can't put one dungeon that is so huge that it's going to take 20 minutes to load. You got to think about performance and things like that in drawing out the dungeon. So that's why it's kind of monetized with in-game gold on expanding it, or you buy or craft something that starts out with a higher point value, which is either going to probably cost you a little bit more real life dollars or more granite to build that entrance that gives your whole dungeon X number of point values. But if you bought a small one, like say the book one, I think it's a 50-point dungeon. If you bought that, it doesn't limit you to expanding it. So in other words, if you only have the row lot property deed that you got for free from doing the whole main quest line, you can build a very large dungeon underneath your row home. Your neighbors may not like that, but you can do that. So again, and I only say this because there's so many people that are misinformed that say, oh my god, it's pay to play, it's pay to play. No. I have a guy in my guild that he may have a benefactor account, but I'm pretty much not even sure of that. And he has a bunch of properties, and he doesn't even sell to the public. He doesn't make things to sell to the public. He has done it on his own. Now, yes, he's been playing since persistence, like many of us, but he's done it on his own. He goes out, he gets his own stuff, he plays. He doesn't even sell to the public at all. Zero. He has no vendors. He has plenty of properties. He could have plenty of vendors, but nope. He just goes out and he buys things with in-game gold. So for everybody that says, oh my god, it's pay to play, absolutely not. I can point you to a guy, and he actually has a job, so he's not playing 24/7, so don't go there either. He's done all this. So, sorry, just had a side note on that. So anyway, I'm on a village lot here, and I've placed one of the bigger footprinted dungeons there. And this is the I think it's called Standing Stones. Let's see, Circle of Stones. Okay, Circle of Stones dungeon. And let's get into how you actually build the dungeon. Okay, so here is the, sample dungeon entrance that I placed, and it was bought from the add-on store. But when I double click it, here's how we're going to go. Now, right now, I can say enter sample dungeon, but that's just the one that they had kind of pre-built in to demo it for us all, that we could run and, do different ones. That is going to be going away to where you need to build it. In order to build your own, you're going to need to say change dungeon, and you're going to need to have some type of foyer. Now, there's already craftable ones in game, and then there's also ones that you can get from the store. Now, I have a single connection stone dungeon foyer as my choice, and I have none of the store-bought ones inside my inventory, so I only have one choice. But if I had store-bought ones, or there was other connection ones that I had crafted, which those will be coming, I would pick one of those. So I'm going to say accept, and it's going to say it's going to take a few minutes for this to take effect. So I'm going to hit escape, and I'm going to wait a couple of minutes, because if I go right back to it right now, oh, wow, it came back pretty quick. Okay. When I was testing this out, it took about 1 to 2 minutes for it to go, okay, I recognize this dungeon entrance. So this is going to be the custom one that I'm building now. Again, sample dungeon is probably going to go away. I don't know if it's R59 or 60 or when, but we want to go into the one that we can build in. So I'm going to say enter dungeon. Now, one thing that they have made note of in the live streams and stuff is that there's not a lot of lighting pre-built into the dungeon. And again, this is the handcrafted one, but it's got pretty good lighting. But hey, I'm always in my miner's helmet, and the reason why I wear these miner helmets, which are craftable by the way, they are considered heavy armor for you casters out there, but they're the one in-game item that I can craft that has automatic light on it, and I don't constantly have to hit a light spell. I know to some people that's more realistic and more RP, but to me it's a pain in the butt, and so therefore I always wear a helmet that has light on it. Some of the early backer helmets had that on them, and you could get a pattern and put it on something else, but the only way to have light right now currently in game is to wear heavy armor helmet, which could affect your fizzle rate if you're a pure caster. But I tell you what, not having to cast light all the time, to me it's just a huge convenience factor. And of course now you can hide your helm where you don't even have to look like you have miner's hat, helmet, head, hair and stuff like that. So anyway, so this is the foyer. This is the player crafted one. And the way that you build your dungeon is, well, you're going to go up to these little icons here, and you're going to want to do a click on it, and just like how you set a house and change what house is there, you get to choose what you want to put there. So this is an L, which means it's going to go off this way, right? Or I can do a T intersection. And it's kind of hard to swing the camera, but there's a T. It's showing, you can see this is the T part of it. And then there's an X. Let's do an X. We'll just do an X for fun. So this is an X, which kind of makes it a four-way kind of thing. It's called X. I would have called it four-way, but they're calling it X. I guess it's an X, depending on, if I stand like this, it looks like an X. But to me, it's a four-way. But that's what it is. So now at each one of these blue markers, I can start building my dungeon out in different directions and different choices that people have. And this is where you maze makers, and I've seen some brilliant mazes done with hedges. You can replicate this now with the items in game for building the granite stuff. So much like we put this piece in, we can now pick a piece. It says none, okay, obviously. And it's telling me my limit. I'm at 1 of 100. Okay, and I can upgrade. I can hit the little upgrade button, and it's going to tell me upgrade with gold. So if I did that, it's going to tell me that I can upgrade my limit by 1 for a cost of 1,000 gold. I believe a 25-point upgrade. I can't remember exactly the incremental factor in this, but for about 300,000, you get X number of points. And again, so this room was a 1-point cost because my limit is 1. The foyer didn't count. Kind of the entryway didn't count. So right now I place this 1X field and it costs 1. Again, I can then do this and I can say an L intersection, or I can do a T intersection, or I can do another X, which really is just going to branch this all off. I don't remember how many things I brought with me to do this demo. I can also do rooms, a 1x1 room, which basically dead ends this spot. Let's do this. So we have a dead end basically at the beginning. And this may contain, if you're building something, if you think about how your players are coming into your dungeon, and they even mentioned this on the live stream as using graph paper to lay out your stuff. Good old days, graph paper, man, graph paper and dice. Loving it. So then I could say maybe I put in some more helpful hints or something here once we can deco the dungeons. Likely I would put all that kind of reference material here, but it doesn't limit me. I can have this little 1x1 room here. I could then go to this room or this next building point, and then I can say, let's do an L. Again, I don't remember how many of these I have, but it can start taking me in new directions. So very easily, just by clicking the icon, I can keep building my dungeon. So I don't know if we can rotate these. Let me look at that real quick. Okay, maybe somebody else can comment on this, but when I'm looking at these L's, I only see it being a right-handed L, not a left-handed L. This is kind of the same similar situation we get in the bars that we can craft, the tavern counters. They only have a right-handed look to them instead of a left-handed look. And I've found that in a few different decos that they only build them one way instead of both ways, a left and a right. I'm not seeing a way to flip it. Maybe somebody can comment on that. Because what if I want it to go to the left? I don't see a way to do that other than building an X and then not doing anything with the X. If I put an X there, then I can go to the left like I want, and I would just have to dead end those. Now, the problem with that is there's different costs in creating each item, so they're almost making me spend more granite to go the direction that I want my maze or dungeon to go in, rather than these little short-stop dead ends. That's a problem to me. I feel like I should be able to do a right-handed left turn, quote-unquote, or L, or left L. I should be able to have an L that goes this way or that way. And perhaps that's something that you guys can suggest on the forums. Yes, I took a moment to myself to rethink that the L only goes one way. And again, it almost makes me feel like I have to spend more points in my dungeon and more granite to redirect back to a different direction. And that leads me to, let's talk about the cost of granite. So obviously your biggest expense is going to be the player made foyer at 1250 granite block. Your T's are 125, your V's are 100, your X's are 150, your rooms are not too bad at 1 by 1 and they're pretty small. Your stairs are kind of hefty at 200, and your 3 by 3 rooms are around 550. Now I'm not going to get into every player encounter room right at this moment. These are just your basic building blocks that any player in game can make without having to go out and farm not only the recipe but then the blueprint. These blueprints you can get. Wow, that's a Steris. Well, you know what I mean. Let's fix that. That's killing me. These are the blueprints that you can buy off merchant, and every time you make one of these items, it consumes a blueprint. So keep that in mind. You need the recipe and the blueprint for the random encounter. So while you may get the recipe, you can't make anything until you actually get the blueprint. So there's not going to be a billion random encounters out there, because first of all, the player has to have the recipe, and then secondly, every time you make one of those, you've got to get the blueprint. So the blueprints on the ones that are drop only in the world are going to tend to be probably higher priced. In addition, we've seen the price of granite increase quite a lot. I think the selling to an NPC was around 10, and then there's a lot of miners that would dump granite rather than haul it back home because it took up so much weight in their inventory, and the money was in getting the ore. We're going to see a slide and a shift in that philosophy, where your miners are going to probably bring back more and make more trips, because now the price of granite's almost gone to match the cost of copper and iron and stuff. So that's going to happen, and if you've stockpiled it, good for you. Right now I've kind of checked out, and I know they've mentioned it in the live streams, but I've kind of checked out. It looks like the price of raw granite's 35 to 40, but again, remember, you've got to have the recipe, and you can get these recipes without having to hunt anything or farm anything or buy them. You can get the recipe and you can get the blueprint, and I forget how much the blueprints are, 100, 200 gold, something like that. So you can make a dungeon without having to farm anything. You're not going to have any random encounters. There's also been talk of random encounters being able to power them up by some way of feeding that section something. We haven't actually seen that demonstrated yet, but that is the thought behind it. So while you might start out with a basic whatever XXX encounter, you can make it harder and harder to make your dungeons harder and harder. All in all, the building blocks that they're giving us is very dynamic content. I remember in EQ2, or was it EQ1? I can't remember. No, I think it was EQ1, where they had these things called Eldons. I think it was EQ2. Eldons, and they were little short dungeons that you ran, and then later I believe they did start putting the building blocks in for players to create kind of their own Eldon thing, and that was like Lost Dungeons of Norath or something like that. And I remember I loved running Eldons with groups because it was like good loot and stuff like that. Hopefully I'm going to see the same kind of trend here, because we see people doing like upper tiers groups, and there's a lot of critics of that because it's like, oh, but really it's just you get to meet a few people, you get to make some new friends, and you hang out with them for an hour or two. You're not committed to a full day. You don't have to be in a guild with them, and you go and you learn together, or maybe you teach them something, or you learn something from them. It's a great exchange for knowledge. So I'd love to see these dungeons kind of being the same thing. They've mentioned in the streams that there'd be almost like a dungeon locator and stuff. Sure, you'd find some where the people have powered up based on what they've said. There are dungeons more, but it doesn't mean you can't go in there and find some solo dungeons to run, or use it for like some of the event things that I've talked about, where it could be a scavenger hunt on a certain day and people run these certain dungeons. They're not necessarily scaled hard and things like that. And it could be for the other things where I said, like, crafters need scrap metal, and it's so hard to find. If you can get the right encounters in your dungeon, you can finally get the freaking scrap metal that you need and stuff like that. I can also see, for me personally, I have the putt-putt golf course that's above land, and It's a lot of deco, and I won't be able to get all that deco because I'm not going to be able to get trees underground. I doubt they'll let me have trees. I might be able to get some mushrooms or something like that, but right now those are all in the add-on store, so I'm not going to spend hundreds of dollars to build a dungeon with mushrooms and things like that when I've already bought trees. But I think that you can still deco them out in enough unique ways to create a pretty cool putt-putt golf course, for say. Um, your your ideas may vary, but again, these are just some things I want to throw out and let your creative juices flow. And I'm sure you're going to come up with some great things, and I'd love to hear them. Like I said, I think I'll start a little thread on what are some of your ideas to use player dungeons for, rather than just going and hunting and killing things. So the next thing to talk about is stairs. One of the most prolific things that I remember, and this is from my youth, is well, Star Trek Wrath of Khan. And it was that while Khan was a genius in many things, he didn't think spatially in the XYZ axis. And this is what can really set your dungeon aside from others, or apart from others. I'm looking for stairs here. Hold on. There we go. And that's thinking in the Z axis, aka vertically. So by being able to go up and put stairs here, so then I can go in here and I can put in, let's see, this is an L. Really hating the L only goes one way, so we're going to go with a T. I can go here with a T, and then I can send more stairs up even higher. I don't have a lot of pieces on me right now for this demo, but I can put some more stairs. Now I'm starting to take my dungeon into multiple levels. Now there's been a lot of people that have asked for how can we have a map or see how our dungeon looks like in 3D with maps, and that's always going to be a challenge. It was a challenge when we tried to do it on graph paper, and it would be a ton of freaking overhead for them to have to map your particular dungeon. One of the things that they've shown in the live stream is their ability in quote-unquote God mode and stuff is to be able to fly over and see things, but that's why they've directed you to being able to visualize it. So if I was doing this on graph paper, obviously I'd say, okay, up here, and I would start a new graph of my second floor. Now, because my second floor can now continue on this way, and I can add a new piece. Let's see what we've got. An L. That right L, man, it's killing me with not having a left L. But anyway, now I can start the second floor is this way on my map, and I can draw it out, visually on my graph paper. And then I can go up to my third floor, which starts out here, and, I can do whatever I want to do. There's that L again. But that's what's coming up first, so I'm just picking it. Anyway, that's how I can make this on my own graph paper to show the different levels of the dungeon. Now, I would think that, since people are asking for maps to be made for them, if you want to spotlight your dungeon and how you've laid it out, gee, would it be nice if you posted on the forums a map of your dungeon for the players that you want to go in and check out your dungeon? Sure, that takes more of your time, but if you really want folks to visit your dungeon, why not show it off and map it out on some graph paper and stuff like that? I don't know. It's just an idea. Again, these are all new ideas and new things that we're all trying to create together because we're being given the basic building blocks. But these are just some thoughts and suggestions on how you can make your dungeon more appealing where people will visit it. Again, the big part I think is going to be deco. I think it's going to give more of a presence. I think there's going to be some people that build grind dungeons. I think there's going to be some people that build beautiful dungeons. I think there's going to be a lot of people that do an intermix of both to give the player a feel of immersion and feel to, oh, we're coming up on a lich room, so maybe there's a bunch of axes before you enter it, those lich axes and stuff. Maybe you're coming up on a mushroom encounter, and before that you see mushrooms in the hallway. What you do to you become a world builder in a sense with the tools that we're going to be given and stuff. I think, like I said, we're going to see grind dungeons and we're going to see aesthetically pleasing dungeons, and I think we're going to have a mix of those. They've also talked about having dungeon finders, so to speak, that where there'd be a list of here's places with dungeons that you can go check out and stuff. Just kind of like how you see your friends and, you hit your friends list and you see them in different places and you go, wow, I've never been there. Let me teleport there and check it out. And again, this goes back to the, some people are like, oh my God, the teleport friends list is horrible. I know, I think it's really good because it allows you to go, I've never been there. Where are they at? I want to go see what's going on there and stuff. And again, the global chat, well, that's kind of they really went against everything they said, and the Nobles chat orbs, really will be devalued. I think it's really good for the game overall, and I do have a Nobles chat orb thingy. I think it's really good. I think it's needed. Players, when I'm playing a new video game, I don't want to have to go to the forums to ask questions. I want that instant gratification. And no, I'm not a millennial. Far from it. But it's nice to be able to talk to somebody in game, even if I'm never going to group with them again or be in their guild or whatever. It's nice to have that thing. Of course, all of our big concerns are, of course, spam bots, because I've seen that so heavily to where in some games I just had to not even go into a quote-unquote city or whatever because it was just ridiculous. And hopefully we can find a way to combat that from the RMTs that inevitably come to any kind of game and spam crap. But, so again, think spatially, don't be like Khan, think in the Z-axis when you're building your dungeons. So in conclusion, as of R58, while we can't deco dungeons, and remember they're having to spend quite a bit of time in ensuring that you can't trap mobs and just kill them quite easily based on deco, the things that are coming up are going to enable us to build fantastic underground stories and stuff. Think about that, just lying a piece of paper on the floor. You can give a depth and a feel to your dungeon. Being able to post something on the wall or whatever is just going to lend more value to your dungeon rather than just building a grind dungeon or something like that I've said. Now, with all that said, I am going to say that I was a little skeptical about the, player-created dungeons because I felt like they were putting the burden of expanding the game on us. And I still do feel that way, but I also see the paths of creativity it can lend and opening up new things for guilds to do and players to do and stuff like that without them having to design scenes, which is obviously overhead. I know that they need to be focused on episode 2, which are new lands, which obviously are going to be new scenes. So just by giving us these kind of building blocks, they're taking a little burden of development off them and allowing us a little more freedom to create our own world. That, I think, is really freaking cool. Now, again, I also think that having a successful dungeon that people go to is the same as having a successful POT. One, you need to advertise. Now, two, with POTs, the thing has been overland versus sub. And some people go, well, why are you still sub? Well, it was because of the devotional things and not having to be under siege. Well, they removed that, so I'm screwed on that factor. Yeah, bitter party of one, for sure, because I stayed, sub POT, and now it's hit me in the ass. But things change, and so I get that. And while I can be a little butthurt over that, and while I didn't see the value in this, I see the room for growth and creativity, which kind of separates this game from other games. I've always been a heavy crafter, heavy builder. EQ2, I could build Ferris wheels. I could build, a friend built a tunnel of love, which was amazing. We could build so much in EQ2. We don't quite have that freedom yet in this game, but I see it coming little by little. And again, it basically boils down to that damn Z-axis. In EQ2, that was the thing that really set it apart, was being able to embed an item inside an item instead of just having a hitbox where items stacked. Being able to embed things. I hope at some point we will see that happen in this game, to where we can use two things to create a unique thing. And that's part of why I'm mentioning this, is because maybe a dev might hear about this video or something. But really being able to basically build anything we want by combining items rather than being um, excluded from building an item using two different combinations, you know. Um, I'd love to see that with the dungeon building. I'd love to see that with the deco that's already in game. And again, that's removing the hitbox from each item that they have, you know, this area of effect where nothing can be near it. Embedding items is one of the best world building things that can happen. Also, there was Landmark, developed by Sony, or well, it got split out from Sony, then it got bought by venture capitalists and got shut down. Because of course that's what's going to happen with those fucking people. Yeah, and I said fucking people. Yeah, don't like VCs too much. Landmark had introduced what's called the voxel, and you could literally take a piece of metal or whatever, which had different colors, and you could stretch it and skew it to build the most amazing things. I mean, I built refrigerators, stoves, farm animals, and all these things just by using the same world building tools that they had created in that game and using it as a player. I see Shroud kind of going that way, sort of, by just giving us some basic dungeon building skills. But wow, the voxels were so cool. Really sad that Landmark got shut down, because it truly gave world building into the hands of the players. We're getting it in a side dose, but I am still happy about it, and that's one of the reasons that I play Shroud, is because of the crafting and the imagination. And it's not just about go kill things or go kill people. You know, I get to do so many creative things, just where my mind takes me. Sometimes I have to look for inspiration in, you know, different places, but that's why I love Shroud. So while our dungeon building is somewhat limited, and especially limited by the amount of granite you can collect or buy or pay, you know, probably through the nose right now at this point, remember, you can go out and get it yourself. And I think we're going to see, I'm pretty sure I've heard them say on live streams and whatnot, that there would be different skins. So it's not always granite for a dungeon. I'm really hoping, like I said, for the metal and wood, even though there's a huge wood shortage right now. I'd love to be able to see it. You know, they've already kind of shown that in the add-on store with different foyers that are foyers that, you know, open up into different things and look a different way. That's a good start, but again, and I think it's probably pretty cheap on the development side to reskin the same LTXV pieces that they already have in game with different skins, to where you can really give a different mood to your dungeon. And once we can light them a little bit better, and you're not required to carry a mining lamp or some kind of light source all the time. I know some players are against that because they're like, it's a dungeon, it should be dark. Well, you know, not necessarily. That's your thought of a dungeon from, you know, maybe, you know, a D&D type of perspective, but, you know, why can't it be a pretty bright place that has danger? There's no reason against that. We don't have to stick to those old rules of dank, dark dungeons. Why can't it be a beautiful place with danger? There's many people afraid of clowns. Clowns aren't dark. Well, maybe some clowns are. But anyway, you know what I mean. So anyway, I hope this gave you some ideas and things to think about, or maybe, you know, push to the devs and stuff. And then also, just a little brief introduction about how you build a dungeon and things to consider. X, Y, Z, not just X and Y, you know, not left and right. Thinking about how to rotate things and stuff. And they've already covered in some of the online streams that you can go into. You can download the developer asset pack, go into Unity, and build things that way in the Unity asset pack and be able to see what you're building. That's going to be over the heads of most people in doing that, because you have to actually learn Unity. But hey, it's something to put on your resume. So think about it that way. But otherwise, you can just kind of fumble through it like a normal person and just build it and think, oh, this doesn't work, or this looped around, or whatever. But I'm really looking forward to the creativity the community is going to bring to player-owned dungeons. Take care, everybody. Happy hunting and be safe.